Alright guys, welcome back to the channel, welcome back to another video, and welcome to what is now the third of my cooking videos. Now, in our last video, I kind of did a quick overview of knives, what I have in my collection, kind of different ones that I use on a daily basis, what they are, and I mentioned one of the next videos would be going a little bit more in depth on each one, showing you how to properly hold each one, how to kind of basically use each one, and a little bit more on the functions that they're used for. So that's going to be today's video, and you might have noticed my little wardrobe change. Kind of off camera in a text, one of my friends mentioned, hey, I like the way your videos are going, but you should probably wear a chef jacket, kind of look more the part. So I thought, what a good idea. So boom, here we go. I just threw on one of my many chef jackets that I have, so it kind of look more, professional, if you will. But yeah, like I said, today's video is going to be all kind of dedicated to how to properly hold knives, how to use them for different functions, and again, I'll probably go over the most important ones that I think that you should have in your collection, again, whether you're just starting out or whether you've been doing this for a while, or if you're just looking to add something kind of into your collection, into your repertoire. So without further ado, let me quickly get set up and we'll get right to that. Alright guys, so hopefully this angle is easy for you to see exactly what's going on. Now, the first item, I'm not actually going to be cutting anything right now, guys, so I'm going to kind of go over the knives. But I want to say one of the most important things that I did not mention in my first video when I was actually cutting vegetables is to make sure you always have your board secured. So there are many different ways you can do that. I'm at home right now, obviously. So I have these kind of non-slip pads. You can easily pick them up from any kind of kitchen supply store or even Canadian Tire, Home Depot. They're just basically a non-slide kind of pad. So I just have it kind of folded in half right now. And then you put your board on top of it, and then it doesn't move around. Because the last thing you want is when you're trying to cut something that your entire board moves away, and then you risk maybe cutting yourself. Your cuts of your actual food are off or whatever. So yeah, little tidbit that I did not mention in my last videos: when you're cutting something, always make sure your board is secured. If you don't have kind of the non-slip pad, if you're just at work or whatever, you can always just grab a piece of paper towel or a damp cloth or something, put it underneath, but just something so that, as you can see, if I don't have it underneath and I'm cutting, my board just kind of freely moves around, which is what you don't want. So, with that out of the way, let me grab some of my knives over here and we'll get started into their different functions. Alright guys, so as I mentioned, this video I'm going to kind of show you how to properly hold and use different knives. Now, at the moment, I don't have anything on my board to cut. I might grab something from the sidelines in a second here, but basically I'll kind of go through them in the same order I did in our last video. So first off, we have the paring knife. Now this guy's pretty straightforward. All paring knives are pretty small in stature. They're really easy to hold, and there really isn't a proper way to hold this. It kind of depends on what you're doing, but the most secure way to hold it is, I don't know how you guys can see here, but basically you want to hold it, you want to get as many of your fingers around it as you can, hold it tightly. Your thumb kind of on the top, and for some extra control, I usually like to have my index finger here kind of maybe on the top or on the side. Again, depends really what you're cutting, but you want to make sure you have kind of complete control over it. You don't want it to be wobbling around too much. Again, you risk maybe cutting a finger, but as I mentioned in the last video, the proper cutting technique is you want to kind of hold your hand in a fist. Keep your thumb kind of tucked in, almost make like a fist, like you're gonna punch somebody. Again, so that the blade of your knife kind of rolls on your knuckles like this. As long as everything's super flat, you're not gonna cut anything, but the minute you pop a finger out, you risk, injury or cutting off your finger. I've done it before, and trust me when I say it's not fun, it hurts. So yeah, your paring knife, basically, like I said, you just wanna hold it tightly. Not too tight that your hand starts to cramp, but not also so loose that the knife will fall out of your hand. And again, the way you hold it kind of depends on exactly what you're doing. But again, you always want to have most of your fingers around the bottom and kind of have your index finger as a little control on the top or on the side, depending on where you're going with it. Now, next up, and what I think to be probably the most important knife that you can have, again, if you want to talk like I did about having knives on a budget, as long as you have a chef knife, whatever size it is, you can do pretty much everything you need to do for cutting things with your chef knife. No, whether it be deboning something, obviously slicing, dicing, whatever it is. Your chef knife is also, you can also kind of call it the utility knife. As pretty much anything I can do with any other knife, I can do with a chef knife. Now, of course, you know, you can't maybe cut bread as well with a serrated knife, but again, if you're in a jam, you're just starting out, you don't have a lot of money to buy a whole knife set, make sure if you have nothing else, everyone needs a chef knife. Okay, so, and to hold your chef knife, again, they're all kind of a pretty standard hold, but your chef knife, you want to make sure that you have, again, with the bread knife, you want to make sure you have a tight grip on it, but again, not so tight that your hand starts to cramp or that it feels uncomfortable in your hand. And again, like I mentioned in my last video, you know, before you go out, don't just go out and buy a knife because, oh my God, it costs $200, it must be really good. Or I don't have to buy it, costs 20 bucks, it must be really good. Make sure, if you have the opportunity, you actually go pick up the knives, kind of hold them in your hand and see, because different knives form to different hands in different ways. And like I said in my last video, you know, these knives that I have, they work perfectly for me, but you know, one of you might come along, pick it up, cut for about 2 minutes and go, oh, I can't use this at all. So once you've established that the knife is for you, basically the simple way to hold it is you just want to kind of pick it up. The way I hold mine typically is I have 3 fingers, so my middle finger, ring finger, and pinky finger are kind of wrapped around the hilt. You see right now my index finger is as well, but so your index finger can wrap around the bottom as well, or what I like to do typically is I like to have my index finger, again, kind of up on the side of the blade just for better control. When you're cutting through things, you know, you don't want your knife to be flopping around when you're trying to cut something. You want to have it straight, firm grip. So by having your index finger on the edge of it, you kind of have some good control. You can go side to side. And alternatively, on the other side, you want to have your thumb kind of wrapped around as well. Obviously, keep your fingers away from the actual blade, but when you're cutting, it's going to look kind of something like this. So you can see I have those 3 fingers on the bottom. I have my thumb on one side of the blade. I have my index finger on the other side of the blade. And you can see when I have it on the board and cutting, you're going to look kind of something like this. And as you can see, I have perfect control. If I just hold it just on the end, you know, you don't have much control. Your knife can kind of flop around, and as soon as you cut through something that's kind of tough, your knife is going to slip and your cuts are going to be kind of off. So the next knife in our set here is going to be our serrated knife, or aka our bread knife. As the name suggests, you mostly use this for cutting bread. The serrated edge gives it a bit more flexibility, you know, whereas if you're cutting, say, tomatoes or vegetables, like in my last video, you want to use obviously a very smooth blade. But no, when you're cutting through something like bread, the grooves in it, it's almost like teeth, so it kind of bites into whatever you're cutting. So it makes, again, cutting through breads, or if you're trying to cut through a cake, it just gives it a bit more of a bite, a bit more of an edge, and actually, in some cases, can go through things a little bit smoother. Now, for the way to hold this knife, again, there's not really a right way or a wrong way. It's whatever feels comfortable for you. Again, the key thing with all the knives, guys, is you want to make sure you have a firm grip on it so that you actually have control over your knife. The knife isn't trying to control you, if that makes any kind of sense. So again, you don't want to have a loose grip and have your knife flopping around in whatever. You want to make sure you have a firm grip on your knife at all times, and then you can actually control whatever you're cutting, whether it be sideways for a cake or for a piece of bread. And with this knife, typically, again, I like to have my middle ring and pinky finger kind of wrapped around the hilt itself. My thumb kind of on one side, and usually my pointer finger kind of on top, because then you can kind of control pressure and which way the knife is going to go. And last for this little set, we're going to talk about our boning knife. And again, just like all the other ones, again, firm grip, make sure you're controlling the knife's not controlling you. And really this one, you want to have a lot of control, because when you're deboning something, it's kind of more of a finesse job, if you will. In a later video, I'm going to get to actually breaking down chicken and some other meats. But again, firm grip, basically the standard that I like to hold all my knives, like I said, is you have these 3 fingers on the hilt, your thumb on one side, your index finger on the other side, and then you can just kind of manipulate the knife around whatever you're cutting, whatever way you need to go. Alright guys, just to give you a quick demo of what I'm kind of talking about with how different knives work for cutting different things. You can see I just have a croissant on the board here, so I'll show you the difference of how, like I said, you can use your chef knife for everything, but how different knives affect it. So with a croissant being a bread, I'm going to use my serrated knife here, and you'll see once again, 3 fingers on the hilt, thumb on one side, index finger on the other side, and we're just going to simply cut through. Now, hopefully from this angle, you guys can see with a serrated knife, boom, it cuts through quite simply. You have a perfect half. Now, you can do that with your chef knife as well, but you'll notice, hopefully, that initially there's a bit of resistance. Why? Because it's super smooth. The teeth, there's no teeth on it, so it doesn't really bite in. So this is where you have to hold the top down a little bit, cut through. You can see how I'm cutting. I'm kind of struggling a little bit while it still goes through. So there, you can see right there, right? Both knives did the exact same thing, but cutting through the bread, the teeth on this kind of hooked and went through a lot smoother than the chef knife did. Okay, so then for my next example, we just kind of went over those 2 knives. So I'm gonna show you with a tomato here. Now for this, I'm gonna use 3 different knives. I'm gonna use the paring knife, my chef knife, and the serrated knife, just so you can kind of see that you can use different knives for multiple different scenarios. But you'll see, hopefully, with this demo, like with the croissant, why certain knives are better for certain situations. And one of the other things you can use a paring knife for, you'll see that most tomatoes, when you get them, they have a little sticker on them. So say you don't have very much nails or anything, you can't really scrape it off. This is one of the spots where you can use your paring knife. Just kind of hold it together on the sticker and pull it off. Boom, easy. Now with a tomato, especially, one of the things that a paring knife is good for is kind of small detail work. So, as most of you know, you can see the tomato, it has the little part on the top where the stem comes out of. Now, that's not really good for eating, so you want to take it out. Well, how do I do that without kind of destroying the whole tomato? Well, that's where your paring knife comes in. And this is where, like I say, you can hold a paring knife a lot of different ways. So for this one, we're going to kind of move our hand up on the blade a little bit, so we only have the very tip of the knife exposed, and we're just kind of use the tip, get it into the tomato here. Hopefully you guys can see what I'm doing there. Right, we're just kind of gently cut around, and we're going to pull out that little stem piece. Boom. And there you go. Now you can see that stem piece is completely gone. We use at the very end of our paring knife to do that. Now, of course, could I have done that with my chef knife? Yes. Would it be as pretty? No. And especially if you're starting out, it's kind of a much bigger and intimidating knife than the paring knife is. So while yes, you can do it, it's harder to manipulate. So like I said, the paring knife is going to be mostly used for kind of your smaller detail work. Now, if I move on to the actual cutting of the tomato, for this demo, I'm going to use my chef knife, and I'm going to use the bread knife to show you. So say you just want to cut tomato wedges for a salad. Well, I'm going to go ahead, use my chef knife, again, holding it the way I showed you before, and just kind of slice through. Now you see how easy that was? Pretty easy, right? Then from this point, I can make my tomato slices, slicing through easily. Boom, there we go. Now, I've heard some people say, oh, but I find it so much easier to use a serrated knife to cut a tomato. Well, again, if you're just cutting slices like this, sure, go ahead. Cut it in half. You can use it to cut. And yeah, the teeth grip into the tomato pretty easily, and you can cut through. So we just did the tomato wedges, as you can see there. And as you can see, you can use either knife. At that point, is basically just a preference. Again, your chef knife is going to be your workhorse knife, so I would recommend try to do more things with this knife to get used to it, to see all the different things you can do. And obviously in later videos, I'll show you more and more ways to use knives and the proper way to use them. But just for this quick demo, you can see both knives work for making tomato wedges. If you really wanted to, you could also use your paring knife. Like I said, right, guys, my battery was dying, so I had to go and switch it quickly. But anyways, so like I was saying, so we've done the tomato wedges. I've shown you how to use the chef knife and the serrated knife for cutting it. Again, I've also shown you how to use the paring knife to take out the little stem piece. But alternatively, again, because the tomato is kind of on the smaller side of things, you could also use your paring knife to cut the tomato wedges. Now, at the moment, my knife isn't very sharp, so that's going to cause a bit of a problem. Like I said, your best knife is always a sharp knife. So if we move on from the wedges, I have another tomato here. And one of the biggest things that I hear people say is, oh, I can't cut tomato slices with just my chef knife. Now, I would say most of the time when I hear that, I tell people, well, how sharp is your knife? And they usually look at me and go, yeah, not very. So I'm going to show you the 2 ways to cut tomato slices. Again, chef knife is your workhorse knife. Could you use a bread knife as well? Yes. But I'm going to show you why you probably want to use your sharper chef knife, just because with, like I said, with the smooth blade, it gets you a little bit of a cleaner cut than the teeth do on the serrated knife. But as a demo, here we go. So tomato slices. We've already done the wedges. Slices, just kind of secure your tomato on the board like so. And then starting off with the chef knife, basically the size is up to you. So you just want to kind of get in there with a smooth motion and cut straight down. Now, you can probably tell my knife is pretty sharp. Keep all my knives well maintained. So you can see you can cut nice thin slices there. But maybe, you haven't gotten to sharpening your knives yet. You can use your bread knife also as well for cutting tomato wedges. It does go through a little bit smoother. The only thing I would say is because it has a bite in it, I find you maybe can't get as nice pieces. But, if you're just cutting some quick slices for sandwiches or for a burger or something, then yeah, go ahead, use your serrated knife. So basically the whole point of this, guys, is to show you that you have all these knives in your collection. You can use multiple knives for multiple things, but once again, like I said, your chef knife is always going to be your workhorse knife because you can do pretty much. Well, if there's something you can't do with your chef knife, then I really haven't figured it out yet. And unless. Okay, so sorry, the phone was ringing there. So as I was saying, pretty much you can do anything that you want with your chef knife. The only things that I've discovered you can't do with your chef knife is, if you're doing some more extreme things, like if you're trying to cut through bone or whatever. Chef knife, not the knife for you, but definitely for basically your everyday functions, slicing tomatoes, cutting through some bread, cutting vegetables, you want to use your chef knife. Like I said, the serrated knife is good, but I would say primarily your serrated knife, you want to stick to using this for bread or cutting through cakes. Once again, down the line, I'll get through some more things. I just want to kind of give a quick demo on how to properly hold the knives, how to use them, and to say that yes, while your chef knife is your most important knife to have in your collection, especially if you're starting out again, having multiple knives is a good thing because, again, maybe your one knife isn't as sharp, so you're going to want to use something else just in the time being to go and cut something. So the one knife I didn't get to yet, guys, is the boning knife. And that's mainly because, like I said, this is for boning, or in this case, deboning, and kind of separation of meats, more fine. Now, could I use it to do tomato wedges or tomato slices? Yes, I could, but typically, you can see, that wasn't the best cut there, but typically, because the blade is so much thinner, like I said, it's more for fine work. So you basically want to keep your boning knife more for actually, deboning chicken, deboning a piece of beef or what have you. So yeah, in terms of using it for kind of every day, not necessary. Again, you're going to be using mostly your chef knives, maybe your bread knife, your paring knives. I think if you have to go for kind of a 1-2 for a knife that you definitely should have right off the bat, I would say get yourself a good chef knife, get yourself a good paring knife, and unlike me right now, make sure your paring knife, both knives are always sharp, ready to go. And I think in the next video, I'm going to actually show you guys how to properly sharpen your knives, given the fact that right now this guy isn't very sharp and it needs to be. Okay, so that was basically a kind of quick overview on how to properly hold knives, how to use knives for different functions, and again, just to quickly recap, your chef knife is going to be your workhorse knife. Whether you've been doing this for years like I have or you're just starting out, make sure you go and get yourself a good chef knife. Make sure you get yourself a good paring knife as well, because basically those two things are what you're going to be using almost every day for almost anything that you're going to be prepping. The other knives, if you don't need them right away, you can kind of slowly build them into your collection. Maybe you work in a kitchen where they have all the other knives. But once again, the most important knife for you to have is especially a chef knife. Make sure it fits comfortably in your hand, your hands don't tire. And again, the best way to keep it special kind of for yourself is don't let other people use it as well. Either, your chef knife is your chef knife. That's kind of your baby. That's kind of, the main, tool, if you will, in any chef's kind of repertoire of equipment. As long as you have a good chef knife, you're going to be going a lot It's going to go a very long way into kind of helping you in your career. Again, whether you're just starting out, whether you've been doing it for a while. So yeah, my top tip, I think, for this video is going to be get yourself a good chef knife. It doesn't matter how much it costs, as long as it works comfortably for you. That's the way to go. So I hope you guys enjoyed kind of this little demo. My kind of island here is kind of a bit of a mess right now. But yeah, like I said, quick demo, how to use the knives. As I mentioned, the next video coming up is going to be how to properly sharpen knives, so stay tuned for that. But as always, guys, if you enjoyed it, please give it a big thumbs up. Let me know if you have any questions down in the comments. I'd be happy to answer them, maybe make another video if something wasn't super clear. I'm going to be posting stuff on my social media as well, so go follow me there. But I'm going to wrap up this video because I feel like I've been talking for too long. And so I'll just say, as always, if you enjoyed the video, please give it a big thumbs up. Remember to subscribe to the channel. Leave me your comments down below, what you like, what you didn't like, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.